In the Warhammer 40,000 universe, few figures inspire as much awe and fear as the Space Marines. These towering warriors are humanity's ultimate defenders, genetically engineered to stand above all others. They are not born as demigods of war, but remade through a grueling and invasive process that transforms a human youth into an Adeptus Astartes. To truly understand what it means to become a Space Marine, we must look beyond their shining armor and legendary deeds and explore the intimate, often brutal reality of their creation. The journey begins with recruitment. Unlike many modern militaries, the Adeptus Astartes do not draw from the general population of the Imperium. Instead, each chapter maintains a rigid system of selection. Potential candidates are almost always adolescent males, usually between the ages of 10 and 16, chosen for their resilience, physical potential, and psychological fortitude. The worlds that supply recruits to the Space Marines are rarely peaceful. They are most often harsh, unforgiving death worlds, feral worlds, or hive cities where only the strongest survive. The philosophy is simple. If a boy has endured famine, predators, or ceaseless violence and still thrives, then perhaps he has what it takes to endure the transformation into a Space Marine. The selection process is merciless. On feral worlds, tribal champions may be offered as aspirants. On hive worlds, gangs are tested through contests of endurance and brutality. Some chapters enforce trials that verge on ritual sacrifice, sending aspirants into lethal environments to see who returns. Only a tiny fraction of those considered even survive these first tests. The Black Templars, for instance, demand a trial by combat against existing neophytes. The White Scars take their aspirants from the fiercest nomads of Chagoris, testing their skills in endurance and speed. For chapters like the Blood Angels, the tests may include spiritual or psychological ordeals as well as physical ones. To be chosen is already a near miracle because the cost of failure is almost always death. Once a boy is selected, his journey into the Brotherhood of Astartes has only begun. The recruitment is less an acceptance and more an abduction into a new existence. Families are left behind without ceremony, identities stripped, and the child's former life is extinguished. He is now an aspirant, a candidate for transformation. At this stage, the candidate is little more than raw material, and the chapter views him not as an individual, but as a vessel to be reforged. The first stage of becoming a Space Marine is indoctrination. This is not merely training in arms or discipline, but a profound reprogramming of the mind. Aspirants are subjected to catechisms of loyalty, the endless recitation of oaths, prayers to the Emperor, and indoctrination into the chapter's unique culture and traditions. Some undergo hypnotic suggestion, others are immersed in psychic rituals led by the chapter's librarians. This indoctrination is vital because the physical metamorphosis to come is so extreme that without a mental framework, many recruits would simply break. The second stage involves implantation. The Adeptus Astartes are defined by their gene seed, biological organs derived from the genetic material of their Primarch. Each chapter maintains a precious stock of this gene seed, guarded with zealous care by the apothecaries. Over the course of years, a successful recruit will receive up to 19 new organs, each engineered to enhance his strength, resilience, and adaptability. But these organs cannot simply be transplanted into any human body. They must be integrated step by step, often requiring surgeries, hormone treatments, and chemical triggers to awaken their potential. The first implant is the secondary heart. This additional organ provides redundancy and vastly improves stamina. A Space Marine can continue fighting even if one heart is destroyed, and the second heart allows him to endure exertions that would kill an ordinary human. Following this, the os modula is introduced, a gland that secretes growth hormones, reinforcing the skeleton and causing the aspirant's bones to grow denser and stronger. Over time, this process fuses the ribcage into a protective layer of bone, creating a natural armor beneath the skin. As these organs take root, the aspirant undergoes relentless physical training. He is expected to endure trials of endurance that exploit his new biology, running for days without rest, lifting weights that no ordinary man could shift, or sparring against older neophytes to test his combat instincts. Failure is not tolerated. Those whose bodies reject the implants or who falter in training are often euthanized or used as servitors. Every step is a narrowing funnel, and only the strongest, both physically and spiritually, will pass through. Beyond biology, the transformation includes psychological conditioning. Hypno-indoctrination is a common method where recruits are subjected to subliminal suggestion, hypnotic trances, and neural conditioning that reinforce loyalty to the chapter and the emperor. Knowledge is also implanted directly into the mind. Languages, tactics, weapon maintenance, and even fragments of battlefield experience from previous generations of Astartes. This process can be traumatic. Aspirants often experience vivid hallucinations or nightmares as their subconscious struggles to reconcile implanted memories with their own. At this point, the aspirant is beginning to lose any sense of who he was before. His name may be changed. His voice begins to deepen unnaturally. His body is now well above average size, approaching 7 feet in height and broad with new muscle mass. His senses sharpen dramatically. The Lyman's ear implant grants him superior balance and hearing, while the catalepsian node allows him to remain vigilant for days without sleep, entering a kind of waking rest. By this stage, the boy who was recruited is effectively gone. What remains is the foundation of a space marine. The process is not uniform across all chapters. Some chapters accelerate the transformation through brutal methods, pushing their aspirants to the brink of madness or death. Others emphasize spiritual trials, demanding the candidate prove his worthiness in the eyes of the emperor. Yet, in all cases, the cost of becoming an Astartes is staggering. Many die during implantation, others lose their sanity. Those who survive are forever changed, no longer human in the conventional sense, but not yet fully Astartes. They exist in a liminal space, straddling mortality and demigodhood. Perhaps most telling is how recruits perceive themselves during this time. Accounts from certain chapters describe aspirants feeling a growing alienation from their former lives. Memories of families, childhood, and home worlds become distant, dulled by the combination of indoctrination and physiological alteration. What fills that void is the chapter itself. The aspirant learns to see his brothers-in-arms as family, the chapter's fortress monastery as home, and the emperor as the father figure who unites them all. Even so, at this stage, the aspirant is far from complete. He has only received a portion of the gene seed implants, and the true transformation is still underway. Ahead lies more organ implantation, more hypno-conditioning, and more trials of faith and battle. The aspirant will be tested not only in body and mind, but also in spirit as he learns what it truly means to serve the Emperor of mankind as one of his angels of death. And so, the journey of becoming a space marine continues, step by step, with each implant, each trial, and each sacrifice forging the mortal youth into something far greater and far more terrifying than any ordinary human could imagine. The transformation into a space marine continues beyond the physical surgeries and genetic implantation. While the gene seed organs form the biological backbone of a marine, the training and indoctrination that follow are what truly sculpt the Adeptus Astartes into instruments of the Emperor's will. To understand this stage, one must recognize that space marines are not merely enhanced warriors. They are molded into embodiments of discipline, devotion, and controlled aggression. The process of becoming one stretches across years and, in some chapters, even decades. The newly implanted aspirant, now considered a neophyte, begins a grueling cycle of training that fuses physical endurance, combat instruction, and mental reconditioning. It is not enough for the body to withstand the changes. It must be honed to operate in harmony with them. Neophytes spend endless hours in combat cages, sparring against one another under the watchful gaze of veteran trainers. Failure is not tolerated. Mistakes are corrected not with gentle instruction, but with brutality. For every lesson learned in training, is one less mistake that could cost a battle brother his life on the battlefield. Weapons training is central. Neophytes are drilled endlessly in the use of bolt guns, chainswords, combat knives, and even their bare fists. The bolter itself is not simply a firearm, it is a holy relic of war, firing explosive shells designed to obliterate enemies of mankind. Learning to maintain, revere, and master such a weapon is a rite in itself. Neophytes are often instructed to strip their bolters down to individual components, clean each piece, and reassemble the weapon under harsh conditions, sometimes blindfolded or in total darkness. The point is not only technical mastery, but mental fortitude. A space marine must be able to rely on his weapon as if it were an extension of his own body. Beyond the bolter lies the art of hand-to-hand combat. Neophytes are trained in forms of martial discipline unique to each chapter. Some chapters emphasize gladiatorial duels where the aspirants fight in front of their peers, victory earning respect and failure bringing shame. Others stress silent, efficient killing techniques, the kind meant for infiltration and precise execution. Regardless of method, the end result is the same: a warrior who can break an enemy with his hands as easily as with a blade. But perhaps the most grueling aspect of this stage is psychological conditioning. The brain of the neophyte, already altered by gene seed, is subjected to hypnotherapy and indoctrination. Using a combination of mnemonic implants, psychosuggestion, and direct neural programming, the trainers implant loyalty, doctrine, and tactical reflexes into the recruit's mind. The Imperial Creed is hammered into the subconscious. Loyalty to the Emperor, to the chapter, and to battle brothers above all else. Individual desires and doubts are systematically eroded. The Marine must not hesitate in the face of horror or waver in his devotion to humanity's survival. This conditioning does not remove personality entirely. Space Marines are not mindless automatons. They retain traits of individuality, often expressed through personal oaths, preferred methods of combat, or quirks of behavior. However, the larger framework of loyalty and obedience is unbreakable. A Marine can debate tactics or express pride in his chapter's traditions, but when an order is given, it is followed without hesitation. The conditioning is designed to ensure that obedience is not forced but instinctive. Rites and ceremonies mark milestones along the neophyte's journey. After enduring harsh trials, a recruit might be ritually branded with his chapter's sigil, symbolizing his progress. In some chapters, these ceremonies are steeped in mysticism. The Ultramarines, for instance, frame them within the traditions of their homeworld, Macragge, emphasizing order and civic duty. The Blood Angels tie their rites to their Primarch's legacy, evoking artistry, sacrifice, and the looming specter of the Black Rage. For the Space Wolves, the rituals take on a more tribal tone, with aspirants drinking from sacred chalices or engaging in hunts meant to prove their worth. Each chapter infuses its unique culture into the process, making the journey as much spiritual as it is physical. As the neophyte adapts to his new body and training, he is assigned real missions under supervision. These operations are often low risk compared to full-scale wars, but still lethal by any other standard. Some chapters deploy neophytes as scouts, testing their ability to survive, gather intelligence, and strike unseen. The scout companies of the Codex-compliant chapters serve as proving grounds where new initiates sharpen their skills in reconnaissance, sabotage, and light combat before donning full-power armor. Other chapters, less bound by Codex traditions, may throw their recruits directly into combat, seeing survival itself as the ultimate test of worth. Here, the recruit begins to wear armor, not the full suit of power armor yet, but lighter carapace plating designed to integrate with his growing physiology. Even so, this gear is centuries beyond what most Imperial soldiers possess. It provides enhanced protection and mobility, giving the neophyte a taste of what is to come once he earns the right to wear the sacred plate of a Space Marine. Life in the chapter's fortress monastery is equally punishing. These vast structures, part cathedral and part fortress, are both home and holy site to the chapter. Within their walls, recruits are expected to follow strict schedules of prayer, training, and study. They rise before dawn to recite litanies to the emperor, spend long hours drilling in combat, and end their days with lessons in history, strategy, and the Codex Astartes, where applicable. Every moment of their existence is regimented, designed to strip away weakness and instill discipline. Over time, the neophyte's connection to his past life fades. The boy who once lived as a hive-ganger, tribesman, or noble scion disappears, replaced by the brother-in-arms forged through shared hardship. Yet fragments of the old self remain, often channeled into a marine's chosen path within the chapter. A recruit with keen eyesight and patience may become a marksman, while one with ferocity and raw strength may excel as an assault specialist. The chapter's chaplains and veterans observe constantly, guiding recruits toward roles that suit their evolving talents. Failure still looms at every step. A body might reject an organ years after implantation, or a mind may fracture under the strain of conditioning. Recruits who falter are often given merciful deaths, their remains honored for having attempted the Emperor's path. Others are consigned to roles as servitors, cybernetic thralls stripped of individuality, or, in rare cases, redirected into auxiliary functions within the chapter. Survival, therefore, is both an achievement and a privilege. By this point, those who endure are far from human. Their bodies are sculpted, armored, and conditioned for war. Their minds are purged of doubt and fear, their loyalty etched into the very fabric of their being. Yet they are still neophytes, incomplete until they take their place as full battle brothers within their chapter. The next stage of their journey, the donning of true power armor and the acceptance of full responsibilities, marks the culmination of their transformation. And so, the path from aspirant to marine progresses steadily, blending ritual, biology, and relentless discipline. The transformation is no single moment, but a series of trials, each stripping away the old self and forging something greater. What lies ahead for the neophyte is the final step, the binding of flesh, armor, and spirit into one indomitable whole. The path of transformation does not relent after the initial organs and the brutal indoctrination of the aspirant. If anything, it intensifies. By this stage, the boy is already larger, stronger, and more resilient than any ordinary human. Yet he remains incomplete, halfway between mortality and Astartes, bearing both the scars of the process and the promise of what he may become. Ahead lies a series of further augmentations that refine his abilities into the terrifying standard of the Adeptus Astartes. The third phase of implantation introduces organs that go beyond simple endurance and strength. These are designed to reshape the aspirant's relationship with his environment, turning him into a weapon that can survive and adapt to hostile conditions where mortals would perish. Chief among these organs is the Omophagia, also known as the Remembrancer. This bizarre implant allows the Marine to absorb not only physical nutrients, but also genetic and even memory fragments from what he consumes. In practice, this grants the Space Marine limited access to the experiences of fallen enemies or allies, transforming meals into a form of intelligence gathering. To an aspirant, the awakening of this organ can be deeply unsettling. Many describe the first time as nauseating or disorienting, their dreams filled with foreign memories that blur the boundaries of self. But this unsettling power is a critical tool on the battlefield, and it reinforces the Marine's detachment from ordinary humanity. Alongside the Omophagia comes the multilung, sometimes called the imbiber. This organ provides the ability to breathe in poisonous or oxygen-deprived atmospheres. In practical terms, it means a space marine can fight in toxic gas, underwater, or even in the thin air of high mountain passes without faltering. The training that accompanies this organ is as brutal as the surgery itself. Aspirants are deliberately exposed to lethal atmospheres, tested in sealed chambers filled with choking fumes, or dropped into flooded caverns to see whether they can survive. Those who fail do not leave those chambers alive. For the chapter, there is no sentimentality. A candidate either adapts and proves the worth of his new organs or is removed as defective stock. Further augmentations, such as the Larraman's organ, responsible for producing biosealants that instantly clot wounds, and the melanchromic organ, which adjusts the marine's pigmentation to resist harmful radiation, are also introduced during this stage. These additions are less spectacular, but no less essential. They collectively allow the marine to operate for weeks or months in environments that would annihilate conventional forces. Taken together, they forge the impression of an unstoppable, deathless warrior who can continue advancing while others would wither or collapse. Parallel to these physical changes, the psychological conditioning of the aspirant deepens. By this point, indoctrination is not simply about loyalty, but about identity. Through hypno-indoctrination, aspirants are made to believe not just in their chapter's mission, but in their own transformation as inevitable destiny. Their tutors and chaplains constantly reinforce the idea that they are chosen, that weakness is treachery, and that the Emperor himself guides their metamorphosis. Dreams become a weapon in this indoctrination. Many aspirants undergo nightly trance sessions in which voices whisper fragments of doctrine directly into their subconscious. Others are subjected to memory graphs that blur their own recollections with those of previous generations of Astartes. For some, this creates the sense that they are not individuals, but living vessels of accumulated memory, carrying the weight of centuries in their minds. Not all survive this stage intact. Some aspirants lose themselves in the foreign impressions left by the omophagia, or collapse under the mental pressure of implanted doctrine. In such cases, the apothecaries are swift to act. A recruit who shows signs of instability or heresy is quietly removed. The chapter does not waste resources on weakness. Sometimes such failures are recycled into servitors. Other times, they are executed outright. For the survivors, however, the process forges a terrifying clarity of purpose. They emerge with fewer personal doubts, their humanity diminished, and their sense of belonging to the chapter magnified. Externally, the aspirant is now unmistakably different from other humans. By his late teens, he may already stand well over 7 feet tall, his musculature exaggerated to superhuman proportions, his features sharp and unnaturally symmetrical due to genetic tampering. The bones of his ribcage have begun to fuse into a solid plate. His skin toughens, and small scars or lesions mark the points of implantation. The aspirant's gait is heavy, predatory, and unnerving. Even before donning armor, such a youth is enough to inspire awe or dread among ordinary people. The training he undergoes during this time reflects his growing power. No longer limited to basic endurance, he is drilled in battlefield tactics, marksmanship, and squad coordination. He learns to use bolters, massive firearms that no human soldier could reasonably handle. The bolter itself becomes a symbol of his transformation, a weapon that reinforces the distinction between Astartes and mortal soldier. While a guardsman might rely on a laser gun, a marine's bolter is a handheld artillery piece, firing explosive shells with bone-shattering recoil. For an aspirant, simply learning to fire such a weapon without being knocked off his feet is a test in itself. Yet training is not restricted to war alone. Spiritual education continues to deepen, especially under the supervision of chaplains. These figures embody the iron bond between faith and violence. To them, the Emperor is not a distant myth, but a living presence whose will is manifest through the chapter. The aspirants learn to pray before every meal, every drill, and every trial. They memorize litanies meant to steel the mind against fear and corruption. For chapters with strong spiritual traditions, such as the Black Templars or the Blood Angels, this period often includes visions, rituals, or sacred fasts designed to purify the candidate's soul. Despite the grueling pace, this middle stage of transformation serves a purpose beyond physical survival. It instills in the aspirant the sense that there is no turning back. He cannot return to his family or community, nor could he function as an ordinary human even if he tried. His metabolism, strength and psychology are alien. He is already something other, set apart from mankind. The only future open to him is that of the Adeptus Astartes. This inevitability becomes both a source of strength and a prison. To embrace it fully is to become one with the chapter. To resist it is to die. By the end of this phase, the aspirant has received over half of the gene seed organs that will define him as a space marine. He has survived multiple trials designed to kill the unworthy. He has endured endless indoctrination, the erasure of his former life, and the slow reshaping of his mind into the likeness of his brothers. And yet, despite all this progress, he is still unfinished. Several critical organs remain to be implanted, and the most dangerous procedures have not yet been attempted. Ahead lies the black carapace, the organ that will allow him to interface with his power armor. But that is still some distance away. For now, the aspirant lives in a liminal state. He is neither boy nor fully marine, neither mortal nor demigod. He is a creature in transition, caught between what he was and what he must become. The chapter sees him as an investment, a weapon in the making, forged in blood and faith. The boy he once was is dead, but the angel of death he is destined to be has not yet fully emerged. In this crucible, the aspirant endures, awaiting the next trial, the next surgery, the next indoctrination session that will strip away yet another fragment of his humanity and bring him closer to the vision of perfection demanded by the Emperor. And as the transformation continues, the question lingers beneath the surface. At what point does the aspirant cease to be human altogether? The answer, as ever in the Imperium, is less important than the result. For the Emperor and the chapter require not men but warriors, and only those who embrace the death of their humanity can rise to serve as his angels of death. The transformation of a human aspirant into a space marine continues with escalating brutality. By the fourth stage of the process, the youth has already endured surgeries, indoctrination, and the first waves of genetic implants. His body is no longer truly human, though neither is it yet the perfected war form of an Adeptus Astartes. It is at this stage that the implants grow increasingly specialized, reshaping the very fabric of the recruit's physiology. These new additions extend beyond survival or raw strength. They grant unique, battlefield-altering abilities. Each one is a step closer to the status of an angel of death, but each also brings agony, alienation, and the growing shadow of monstrosity. One of the most crucial organs implanted at this stage is the preomnor. This is not a simple stomach, but a highly modified secondary digestive organ designed to neutralize toxins, poisons, and indigestible materials. A space marine cannot afford weakness on the battlefield, and starvation or poisoning are threats the Emperor's warriors cannot tolerate. The preomnor allows the marine to consume food that would be lethal to ordinary humans. Fungal growth scraped off stone, the flesh of alien creatures, or battlefield rations contaminated by radiation. For the aspirant, the adaptation process is harrowing. He must undergo controlled exposure to toxins under the supervision of apothecaries, who force him to ingest substances that would kill a normal man. The result is usually violent sickness at first, but over time his body learns to endure. What begins as agony becomes resilience, though the cost is yet another step toward losing his humanity. Following this, the Omophageia is introduced. Known colloquially as the Remembrancer organ, it gives the Space Marine the ability to absorb genetic memory from flesh. By consuming a small portion of another creature's tissue, a Marine may access fragments of instinct, experience, or even stored memories. It is a gift, both grotesque and strategic. On the battlefield, this allows a Marine to learn about an enemy's physiology or tactics in the most primal way imaginable. For the aspirant, however, the first activation is often disturbing. Many report dreams filled with alien sensations after their first ingestion trial, feeling as though they had lived lives that were not theirs. For some chapters, such as the Raven Guard, the Omophageia becomes an essential tool in gathering intelligence. For others, such as the Black Templars, it is regarded with a certain religious awe, a holy gift that binds the Astartes more closely to their prey. Another step comes with the introduction of the multi-lung, sometimes called the third lung. This organ allows a space marine to breathe in oxygen-depleted or toxic atmospheres by filtering out poisons and maximizing air intake. Its effectiveness is legendary. A marine can inhale water vapor, smoke, or even acidic fumes and still survive. The testing process for aspirants is as cruel as ever. Recruits are forced into sealed chambers filled with choking smog, their lungs burning as their bodies adapt. Some suffocate, others emerge, gasping but victorious, their physiology forever changed. With this adaptation, an aspirant becomes capable of waging war in the most inhospitable of environments, from volcanic ash fields to gas-choked hive world ruins. The Laraman's organ follows. This specialized implant works in conjunction with the aspirant's blood, releasing biosealants that instantly clot wounds and form a protective scab-like film over injuries. For the aspirant, this is a terrifyingly real trial. Apothecaries deliberately inflict wounds, testing whether the organ activates and if the marine's blood chemistry has been altered correctly. Those who fail the trial bleed to death, their corpses silently removed for dissection. Those who succeed experience the eerie sensation of watching their own body seal itself against trauma, as though their flesh has learned the Emperor's will. With each of these organs, the aspirant undergoes more rigorous trials. He is starved and forced to eat poisoned food, made to inhale toxic vapors, or cut open deliberately so his body can prove its worth. The process is merciless because it cannot be otherwise. An incomplete marine is not tolerated. His weakness would endanger his brothers and defile the chapter's sacred gene seed. Each aspirant knows that survival is not a right but a duty. Failure is dishonor, and dishonor is met with death. Parallel to the implantation of organs, the hypno-indoctrination deepens. Recruits are placed in meditative trances, subjected to psychic suggestion, or exposed to endless cycles of battle data. Their subconscious minds are reshaped into repositories of tactical instinct. At night, their dreams are haunted by visions of war, not metaphorical, but literal echoes of countless past campaigns that have been impressed into their memories. For some, these induced visions become indistinguishable from reality. They remember wars they never fought and victories they never earned, but the effect is the same. The aspirant begins to think like a space marine. The instincts of war replace the innocence of youth. The chapter's culture continues to be etched into their minds. Each chapter has its own doctrines, legends, and rituals, and indoctrinations ensures the aspirant identifies not only with the Imperium, but with his new brotherhood. Among the Ultramarines, recruits learn the Codex Astartes almost as scripture. Among the Space Wolves, they are immersed in sagas and traditions that date back to Fenris. The Dark Angels demand secrecy, loyalty, and silence regarding their hidden past. Whatever the chapter, the indoctrination becomes total. By the end of these stages, the aspirant no longer thinks of his past family or his former world. His loyalty is narrowed to three things: his chapter, his brothers, and the Emperor. At this point, aspirants are also pushed to their physical limits in live fire trials. It is not enough that they carry the organs within them. They must demonstrate the ability to use them under the chaos of combat. Trials may include prolonged marches in poison-choked terrain, battles against feral beasts, or sparring under live ammunition. Casualties are common. For the chapter, this is acceptable. Better that the weak fall now than fail in war. For the aspirant, it is yet another lesson. Pain is the constant companion of an Astartes, but survival is his only duty. Through this merciless refinement, the boy who was chosen has now nearly vanished. His voice has grown deeper, his height has pushed beyond 7 feet, and his musculature is nearly superhuman. His senses are sharper than any mortal man's. His mind is saturated with knowledge not his own. His blood seals his wounds, his lungs draw strength from poison, and his stomach renders toxin into nourishment. But though he is no longer mortal in any conventional sense, he is still incomplete. More organs remain to be implanted, more trials to endure, and more layers of indoctrination to be etched into his being. He is a weapon still in the forge, glowing with heat but not yet tempered. By the conclusion of this stage, the aspirant has become a creature in transition. No longer a boy, no longer merely human, he is a hybrid, half mortal, half demigod, standing at the threshold of his final transformation. Ahead lies the implantation of still stranger organs, enhancements that will reshape his mind, grant him mastery over sleep and perception, and further sever his ties to humanity. What waits beyond is not just survival, but the full realization of his destiny as an Adeptus Astartes, an angel of death in service to the Emperor of mankind. And so, the journey continues, each organ a crucible, each trial a narrowing path. With every sacrifice of blood, memory, and flesh, the aspirant edges closer to becoming one of the most feared warriors the galaxy has ever known. The transformation from aspirant to full Astartes is not completed simply by the implantation of organs or even the sacred black carapace. Once the physical changes are finished, there remains the more subtle but equally vital labor of forging the mind, spirit, and soul into the image of the Emperor's warrior. Part 5 of our journey focuses on the psychological conditioning, the indoctrination, and the relentless spiritual trials that complete the forging of a space marine. The human boy who entered the chapter's halls is now something vastly more. His body is larger, his strength beyond natural limits, his physiology alien to his former self. Yet, left untempered, such power is dangerous. Without discipline, purpose, and faith, a space marine would be nothing more than an uncontrollable weapon, a beast in armor. It is for this reason that the chaplains, the spiritual guardians of each chapter, play a critical role in shaping the mind of the neophyte. Within the echoing vaults of the fortress monastery, the chaplains conduct their rites. Clad in black armor, adorned with skulls and relics of faith, they embody both fear and reverence. Their sermons are not gentle. They are thunderous, demanding, and uncompromising. The neophytes kneel on cold stone floors as litanies of hatred for the enemies of mankind are seared into their minds. They learn not only loyalty to their chapter, but a hatred for the alien, the mutant, and the heretic. Such indoctrination does not simply fill the aspirant with words, it rewrites his very thinking. Doubt is carved away, fear is burned out, and in its place is left a mind conditioned to obey, to fight, and to kill in the name of the Emperor. This indoctrination is reinforced by a range of psychological methods. Hypnotherapy, a crucial step in the process, is employed to align the neophyte's subconscious mind with the reflexes of a space marine. Through hypnotic suggestion, new battle instincts are instilled. Reflexive reactions, such as bolter reloads, target acquisition, or close combat strikes, are layered into their nervous systems, so natural that they become indistinguishable from instinct. A neophyte emerging from hypno-indoctrination finds himself capable of acts he did not consciously learn, his body moving with the knowledge of countless warriors before him. This hypnotic training also ensures obedience. The words of a superior officer, particularly those of a chaplain or captain, carry with them a weight reinforced by psychological programming. When ordered into the jaws of hell, a space marine does not pause to consider, he acts. His loyalty has been engraved into his very being. For some outside the Imperium, this might seem a form of slavery of the mind, but within the grim reality of the 41st millennium, such devotion is survival itself. The Imperium cannot afford hesitation. It requires warriors who will fight until their last breath, regardless of the odds. Beyond hypnotic training, there are more brutal methods. The chaplains employ pain as both punishment and reinforcement. Neophytes who falter, even slightly, may find themselves under the lash or subjected to agonizing penances. In many chapters, candidates are required to memorize vast catechisms of battle and faith. Failure to recite them word for word can result in days of fasting, flogging, or prolonged exposure to sensory torment. These punishments are not cruelty for its own sake. They are tools of refinement. A space marine must endure hardship without breaking, and such ordeals prepare them for the horrors of the battlefield. At the same time, the aspirants are immersed in the martial traditions of their chapter. Every chapter carries with it a history, songs of victory, tales of sacrifice, oaths sworn across millennia. The neophytes learn these histories as scripture. They are taught to see themselves not as individuals, but as continuations of a legacy stretching back to the days of the Great Crusade. In this way, the chapter becomes their family, their identity. Whatever past life they once had fades into insignificance. The fortress monastery itself reinforces this transformation. These immense structures, half cathedral and half fortress, are built to overwhelm the human mind with awe. Vaulted ceilings, stained glass depicting the emperor's triumphs, and statues of long-dead heroes remind neophytes of the destiny awaiting them. Within these halls, they march in procession, chant war hymns, and kneel before reliquaries said to contain fragments of saints or even gene seed of primarchs. The atmosphere is not merely architectural, it is spiritual indoctrination carved into stone. But indoctrination does not end at ritual. Combat trials continue unrelentingly. Neophytes are pitted against each other in endless sparring, their minds conditioned to see every fight as sacred training for the battlefield. They drill with bolters until the recoil becomes second nature. They fight with chainswords until the scream of the weapon's motor becomes as familiar as their own heartbeat. Even in simulation, they are taught to never retreat, to never yield, and to carry forward no matter the odds. During this stage, the differences between those who will rise as Astartes and those who will fail become stark. The implants are merciless, and the conditioning is harsher still. Some aspirants collapse under the mental strain, their minds unable to carry the burden of transformation. Such individuals may be repurposed in rare cases as servitors, mind-wiped drones of flesh and metal. More often, they are executed, their remains incinerated in silence, remembered only as sacrifices to the chapter's future. For those who endure, the transformation is not only physical and mental, but spiritual. They learn to see the Emperor not simply as a distant god, but as the very reason for their existence. Every breath, every heartbeat, every drop of their blood is his. In this way, the neophyte ceases to be a man at all. He becomes a weapon sanctified by faith, a fragment of the Emperor's will made flesh. The process is terrifying in its completeness. Imagine being stripped not only of your humanity, but of your very self, rebuilt into something alien, something greater, yet also less. For the aspirant, there is no going back. Whatever family he once had, whatever name he once carried, is now gone. His brothers are his chapter, his father is his primarch, and his god is the emperor. By the end of this indoctrination, the neophyte is unrecognizable as the child he once was. He is larger, stronger, harder, and filled with a faith that burns away doubt. He has endured pain, hunger, and fear beyond comprehension. He has been broken down and rebuilt. He is ready, at last, to don the sacred armor of a space marine. And so, as the indoctrination reaches its culmination, the black carapace now fully integrated, the time comes for the next step, the ritual of receiving power armor. The neophyte is no longer merely in training. He is on the threshold of becoming an Astartes, standing at the door of the eternal brotherhood of the Adeptus Astartes. What remains is to take his place among the legends of the chapter, clad in the holy war plate that will mark him forever as the Emperor's chosen. The transformation from a mortal recruit into a full space marine does not stop once the last organ is implanted. In fact, some would argue the most critical stage begins only after the body has been rebuilt. For all their new strength, resilience, and altered biology, a space marine is still a man who must learn how to master what has been grafted into him. The sixth stage of their journey is therefore defined not by surgery, but by indoctrination, training, and the molding of mind and soul. This period is known to many as the indoctrination and hypnotherapy phase, though in reality it encompasses much more than simply conditioning. It is where the recruit ceases to think as an individual and begins to embody the creed of the chapter. To understand this phase, we must consider how dangerous a partially transformed neophyte can be. Without discipline, his newfound organs and chemical alterations would make him volatile, his aggression heightened, his instincts animalistic. If left unchecked, he might lose himself in berserk rages or collapse under the weight of sensory overload. The chapter cannot afford such liabilities. Thus, the recruit must be unmade mentally, and then reforged as something new. Indoctrination begins with the first introduction of hypno-indoctrination, a process by which the neophyte's subconscious is overwritten with layers of discipline, loyalty, and battle doctrine. Using psycho-indoctrination chambers, the recruit is placed in a drug-induced trance, his mind opened to suggestion. He is bombarded with holographic imagery, whispered catechisms, and subliminal orders. Every sensation is engineered to carve obedience into his psyche. The neophyte may spend hours, sometimes days, within these chambers, his mind forced to relive imagined battles, memorize tactical protocols, and absorb sacred litanies of the chapter. Each chapter's methods vary, but the core principle is universal. Strip away doubt, enforce loyalty, and hardwire martial instinct. The Ultramarines, for instance, are said to encode entire tactical treatises of Roboute Guilliman directly into the minds of their initiates. The Black Templars, by contrast, flood their neophytes with visions of eternal crusade, hammering into them an unyielding hatred for the alien and heretic. Whether through logic or fervor, each chapter ensures its warriors think not as men, but as living extensions of their Primarch's will. But indoctrination is not only about loyalty. It also introduces the neophyte to the psychic disciplines needed to command his altered biology. His new organs must be consciously mastered. The mucranoid system, for example, which coats the body in a protective layer when exposed to toxins, must be triggered by thought. The recruit learns the precise meditations required to engage or disengage such responses. The Becher's gland, which can secrete corrosive venom, must be controlled with care, lest the Marine injure himself or his allies. Even the simple act of regulating his multi-lung system demands training. Without it, a neophyte might suffocate in the wrong atmosphere or fail to maximize his endurance during combat. These lessons are reinforced through grueling drills. Neophytes are exposed to toxins, drowned in vacuum chambers, or made to fight while their bodies are bombarded with chemical stimuli. The point is to teach control under stress, to ensure that their enhanced physiology responds not out of panic, but in precise alignment with battlefield needs. Every organ becomes a weapon, but only if mastered. The mental forging is just as intense. Beyond hypnodoctrination, the recruit undergoes the chaplain's spiritual trials. Here, faith is drilled into him as much as any tactical maneuver. The chaplains stand as both priests and wardens, delivering sermons that burn away the remnants of doubt. Through ritual and penance, recruits are made to embrace the Emperor not merely as a distant god, but as the absolute center of their existence. His will becomes their purpose, his light the only truth they acknowledge. In the eyes of the Imperium, this is not optional, it is survival. For without absolute belief, a space marine could never endure the horrors he will face. The harshest element of indoctrination is the breaking of individuality. Many recruits arrive with strong cultural identities, tribal bonds, or personal attachments. These are stripped away. The chapter erases them through constant reinforcement. New names are given, oaths sworn, and the past buried. To remember one's former life is to risk hesitation on the battlefield. From this point onward, the recruit is not the child of his world, but the son of his chapter. Training intensifies during this stage as well. Physical conditioning rises to levels far beyond anything the human body could once endure. With their new organs fully functioning, neophytes are subjected to simulated battles, endless sparring, and live fire exercises that test not only endurance but tactical instinct. They are pitted against one another in duels, forced to fight larger numbers, and made to withstand punishment that would shatter unaugmented men. In these trials, failure is not always forgiven. A weak neophyte risks death at the hands of his peers or the dispassionate judgment of his superiors. The chapter will not waste resources on those who falter. As recruits advance, they are issued their first suits of training armor. Though crude compared to full power armor, these practice suits weigh hundreds of kilograms, forcing the neophyte to develop the raw strength and coordination needed to eventually wield the sacred panoply of a space marine. Every movement becomes deliberate, every strike a test of precision. The constant weight hardens their bodies, while the endless repetition ingrains instinctual responses into their minds. Weapons training accompanies this. The bolt gun, sacred tool of the Adeptus Astartes, is introduced early. Recruits learn to revere the machine spirit within the weapon, offering prayers before firing. They master the recoil, the precision bursts, and the destructive impact of the bolt round. Other weapons follow: chainswords, plasma pistols, power blades. But the lesson is always the same. The weapon is not merely a tool, but an extension of the Marine's faith. All of this is reinforced by hypno-doctrine. During rest periods, recruits are again placed in trances, their minds replaying the drills and battles they endured while their bodies recover. This accelerates their development, allowing months of experience to be compressed into weeks. The constant cycle of battle, indoctrination, and rest ensures that when they awaken, they are already more soldier than man. The combination of these trials produces profound psychological change. Where once a boy stood, now there is silence, obedience, and unwavering purpose. A neophyte learns to kill without hesitation, to endure without complaint, and to march forward even when his flesh screams for rest. More than anything, he learns to see himself as part of a collective, his brothers in arms, his chapter, his primarch, and the emperor. Alone, he is nothing. Together, they are the emperor's wrath. It is during this stage that the neophyte truly becomes dangerous. His body is fully functional, his mind sharpened by doctrine, his faith unshakable. Yet he is not yet a full space marine. That honor requires final testing, the most brutal trials of service that will prove his worth to the chapter. Those tests will determine who among the indoctrinated survives to take the final oath. And so, as the fires of indoctrination burn away weakness, the neophyte is prepared for the last crucible on his path, the trials of service in the field. It is there, amid real war, that his transformation will be completed. A space marine's path from neophyte to full Astartes is brutal, not only in body and spirit, but in fire-tested proof upon the battlefield. Up to this point, the recruits have endured surgeries, indoctrination, and relentless training within the fortress monastery. But no amount of simulation or ritual can replace the ultimate crucible, real war. Part 7 of this journey takes us into the proving grounds of the Imperium's countless battlefronts, where aspirants must demonstrate their worth in the field. These are not staged trials. They are true campaigns, often lethal, where recruits fight alongside their mentors and are expected to endure the full measure of the Emperor's enemies. For many chapters, these trials are known as the scout phase. For others, it is simply service, bloody, uncompromising, and final. At this stage, the neophyte is not yet clad in the full panoply of Astartes' warplate. Instead, he serves as a scout marine, outfitted in lighter armor that allows for stealth, speed, and adaptability. His role is not to stand in the shield wall of battle, but to stalk ahead, gather intelligence, ambush the foe, and strike from the shadows. This role is as much a test of discipline as of combat skill. Scouts learn patience, endurance, and the art of precise lethality. In many ways, it is here that the psychological conditioning of indoctrination is truly tested. Imagine a squad of scouts crawling across the ash wastes of a war-torn world. Above them, the sky glows with the fire of orbital bombardment. Around them, alien ruins sprawl like skeletal remains. Their task is simple in description, but lethal in practice. Infiltrate enemy lines, sabotage a supply route, or assassinate a Xenos commander. With every heartbeat, the recruits are forced to control their fear, steady their bodies, and act not as individuals, but as coordinated fragments of a single will. These missions are often commanded by veteran sergeants, battle brothers who have survived centuries of war. Their eyes are sharp, their standards merciless. A single misstep by a neophyte may doom an entire squad, and such failure is not tolerated. A recruit who cannot maintain silence during infiltration or hold his ground during ambushes will find himself swiftly corrected, sometimes fatally. To falter here is to prove unworthy. Yet this phase is not designed only for stealth. Scouts are expected to kill, and to do so without hesitation. Armed with sniper rifles, combat blades, or bolt pistols, they hone their ability to eliminate key targets with ruthless efficiency. One day, it may be a cult leader stirring heresy in a hive city. Another, it may be an orc warlord directing a tide of greenskins. Whatever the foe, the scout learns to think like a predator, patient, calculating, and merciless. Some chapters take this role to extremes. The Raven Guard, for instance, make their scouts the very soul of their operations, embedding them deep within enemy lines for months at a time. By contrast, the Space Wolves treat their neophytes, known as Bloodclaws, less as infiltrators and more as feral shock troops, hurling them into direct combat to temper their rage and bloodlust. Each chapter molds its recruits according to its traditions, but the underlying truth is the same. Survival in real war is the only true proof of readiness. This stage is also where the neophyte begins to truly comprehend the scale of the Imperium's wars. Within the monastery, he heard litanies of endless battle, but now, standing in the mud and ruin of a war-torn world, he sees it firsthand. The skies dark with enemy flyers, the thunder of Imperial artillery, the screams of mortals caught in the crossfire. These are no longer abstractions, they are the fabric of his existence. And in this environment, his faith is tested most severely. For all their indoctrination, the recruits are still young men. They feel fear, they feel hesitation. It is here, in the crucible of the battlefield, that those emotions are burned away or consume the aspirant whole. Some falter, their minds cracking under the horror of war. Such individuals are swiftly removed, either executed by their squad or returned to the apothecaries for servitor conversion. For the survivors, however, each battle carves away weakness and tempers resolve. In addition to combat, this phase reinforces the sacred bond between brothers. Scouts fight and die, not as individuals, but as squads, relying on one another utterly. Their survival often hinges on trust, and over time, these bonds become unbreakable. This brotherhood is not sentimentality, it is necessity. For a space marine, the battle brother beside him is his lifeline, his shield, and his mirror. Without that bond, the chapter cannot function. The culmination of the scout phase often comes in the form of a final trial mission, an operation designed to push the neophyte to his absolute limit. It may involve holding a position against impossible odds, infiltrating a heavily fortified stronghold, or executing a precision strike against a monstrous foe. Whatever the task, the lesson is the same: victory at any cost, without hesitation, without doubt. Those who succeed earn not only survival, but recognition from their mentors. Those who fail are left behind, their names never spoken again. It is important to remember that this stage is not brief. A neophyte may serve as a scout for years, perhaps decades, depending on the chapter and the wars it faces. Only when he has proven himself countless times over, demonstrating both lethal skill and unwavering loyalty, is he deemed ready to ascend to the full ranks of the Adeptus Astartes. When that moment comes, it is more than a promotion. It is a transformation. The neophyte is called before his superiors, his deeds recounted, and his worth acknowledged. At last, he will be granted the right to don the sacred power armor of his chapter. His time as a shadow, a learner, and a half-formed warrior ends. He will emerge as a space marine in truth, ready to take his place among the immortal brotherhood. But even this elevation is not the end. It is simply the beginning of eternal war. For the newly raised Astartes, every battlefield will be another test, every campaign another crucible. Yet he will face them not as a boy, nor as a scout, but as the Emperor's chosen, clad in warplate and bearing the weapons of a god. Thus, the scout phase is both an ending and a beginning, the death of the aspirant and the birth of the warrior. It is the bridge between humanity and transhumanity, between weakness and strength, between mortality and legend. And for those who endure, it is the final proof that they are worthy to stand as Space Marines. The journey of a Space Marine does not culminate with his years as a scout. Rather, it reaches its most profound turning point when he is finally deemed worthy to ascend into the ranks of the Adeptus Astartes in full. This moment is both ritual and transformation, the true severing of mortal identity and the birth of an angel of death. The process begins not on the battlefield, but within the fortress monastery itself, in the most sacred sanctums reserved for consecration and judgment. These are halls thick with incense smoke, lined with relics, and echoing with the thunderous chants of chaplains. It is here that the names of those who endured the trials of the scout phase are called aloud. One by one, they step forward to stand before the Brotherhood, their deeds recounted by veteran warriors who have observed their growth. The weight of those words is immense. Each act of valor, each moment of discipline, and each sacrifice has brought them to this threshold. The neophyte does not simply receive power armor as one might don a uniform. To wear the sacred warplate is to inherit the legacy of centuries. Every suit is a relic, crafted with precision and blessed with sanctity. Some components may be older than the Imperium itself, maintained and passed down through countless generations of battle brothers. Before it is fitted, each piece is washed in oils of consecration, inscribed with purity seals, and awakened by the Tech Marines with the chanting of binary prayers. Chaplains recite litanies of devotion, and the aspirant swears oaths not only to his chapter, but to the Emperor himself. Piece by piece the armor is placed upon him. The gorget seals over his neck, cutting away the last sensations of vulnerability. The breastplate locks against his chest, weighty yet balanced with servos that amplify his every movement. Pauldrons, greaves, vambraces, gauntlets. Each segment snaps into place with a hiss of pressurized seals. Last of all, the helm is lowered, its autosenses flaring to life as the world changes forever. No longer does the warrior hear with his ears alone, but through vox filters and comms. No longer does he see as a man, but through enhanced optics that paint the battlefield in clarity unnatural to human senses. When the final lock clicks into place, the transformation is complete. The boy, the aspirant, the scout, all are gone. In his place stands a space marine. The psychological shift is overwhelming. To stride in warplate is to embody more than strength. It is to feel every step resonate with thunder, to know that one's fists can shatter stone, and that the armor encasing the body is a fusion of faith and technology blessed by the machine god. But this is not a moment for arrogance. The newly anointed Astartes is reminded again and again that his power is not his own. It is the Emperor's gift, to be wielded only in service. For the chapter, the Ascension ceremony is not simply about arming a warrior. It is a reaffirmation of purpose. The chaplains deliver sermons of purity, warning the initiates against pride, doubt, or hesitation. The chapter master, or in some cases a captain, may personally address the new brothers, reminding them that their lives no longer belong to themselves. From this point forward, they are weapons wielded by the Imperium's will against the darkness of the galaxy. Yet the chapter does not allow this transformation to linger in ceremony alone. Almost immediately, the newly armored Marines are deployed. They have proven themselves as scouts, yes, but war does not wait for ritual. Their first campaign as full Astartes is the true test. the point at which they learn whether they can carry the weight of their new identity into the crucible of real combat. The difference is night and day. As scouts, they learned stealth, patience, and precision. As Space Marines, they are thrown into the storm. Drop pods slam into war zones, their doors blasting open as the neophyte-turned-Marine charges into the firestorm alongside warriors centuries his senior. No longer does he crawl in shadows or whisper orders into Vox relays. He is now the shock, the fury, and the steel of the Imperium. The bolter in his hands is a weapon of terrifying power, each round explosive enough to rend an armored foe to pieces. The chainsword whines with fury, its teeth hungry for flesh and steel alike. For the first time, he experiences the unrestrained brutality of open battle as one of the Emperor's chosen. The shift is humbling. The armor may make him feel invincible, but the galaxy is swift to remind him that even Astartes can die. Xenos monstrosities, traitor legions, demonic horrors, each is more than capable of tearing through ceramite. Many fresh Marines fall in these early campaigns, their long journey ending as abruptly as it was completed. Their sacrifice is not forgotten, but it is not mourned as a tragedy. It is the nature of eternal war. Those who survive understand the truth. Survival itself is victory, and every battle is another proof of their worth. Over time, the new Astartes grows into his role. He learns to move in his warplate with instinctive precision, to fire his bolter without hesitation, and to fight not merely as himself, but as part of a squad. He learns the sacred battle cant of his chapter, the signals that guide formations, the rituals performed before a drop. Slowly, the boy who once trembled in the shadows becomes indistinguishable from the brothers beside him, a living weapon of the Imperium. This transformation marks not just the culmination of one phase, but the true beginning of another. The Astartes is no longer a recruit, no longer one of many hoping for ascension. He is a Space Marine. He will carry this identity for centuries, perhaps millennia, until death claims him on some far-flung battlefield. His duty is eternal, his war unending, his life no longer his own. The ascension is thus both blessing and burden. It is glory, but also deathless servitude. It is honor, but also the erasure of self. To be a Space Marine is to be reborn, not as man, but as legend. And with this rebirth, the Imperium gains another weapon in its arsenal, another warrior to hold the line, another guardian of humanity's fragile survival, another brother sworn in blood and steel to the Emperor's eternal cause. This is the moment every aspirant dreams of, and the moment every veteran remembers. For within the fortress monasteries of the Adeptus Astartes, the ascension of a new brother is more than ceremony. It is proof that the chapter endures. It is the death of the neophyte, and it is the birth of the Space Marine. The final stage in the long, brutal transformation from human aspirant to Space Marine comes not in the surgical chambers or the training yards, but in war itself. Every implant, every lecture, every oath sworn within the fortress monastery has been preparing the neophyte for this moment, his first true battle in the service of the Imperium. No trial is more important, and no failure more final. For in the crucible of war, a recruit either proves himself worthy of the name Astartes, or he dies, and is remembered only as another failed experiment upon the Emperor's altar. When a chapter decides the time has come, the neophytes are assembled, armored in power armor, sometimes incomplete suits, relics adapted for training or modified to suit their still developing frames, and armed with the iconic weapon of their kind, the bolter. The first time a neophyte feels the weight of a bolter in his gauntleted hand, the moment is etched into his soul. Here is a weapon of terrible finality, a firearm that does not simply kill, but obliterates, hurling mass reactive shells that detonate within the flesh of its targets. For the recruit, to bear a bolter is not just to wield death, it is to shoulder the burden of responsibility for the survival of mankind. The campaigns chosen for these first trials are rarely glorious. Few chapters would risk their veterans in minor wars on forgotten frontier worlds, but such conflicts are ideal crucibles for the untested. These battles are often against the Imperium's myriad enemies: alien raiders, feral orcs, cult uprisings, or the seething hordes of mutants that boil up from underhives. For the chapter, it is efficient. For the neophyte, it is baptism by fire. Planetfall is itself a shock. For aspirants who grew up on tribal plains, desert wastes, or feudal kingdoms, the roaring descent of a drop pod into the midst of battle is as alien as any Xenos. The crushing G-forces, the deafening thunder of atmospheric entry, the bone-rattling impact upon landing, all of this hits them in an instant, and before they can process it, the pod doors slam open and war crashes into them like a storm. Smoke, tracer fire, alien war cries, and vox commands from sergeants erupt all at once. The neophyte must master his fear in those first seconds or be consumed by it. Once deployed, the lessons drilled into them for years are tested under live fire. They are expected to hold formations, to advance under cover, to clear buildings, and to obey orders, even in the face of horror. Here, the weaknesses of the flesh are mercilessly revealed. Some neophytes are too slow, their reflexes not yet honed to the demands of combat. Some hesitate to fire, unable to reconcile the reality of killing with the doctrine they have memorized. Others break under the psychic terror of alien foes, and when they falter, the battlefield exacts its toll. The veterans assigned to oversee them, sergeants, chaplains, or sometimes the grim-eyed sword brethren of the Black Templars, or equivalents in other chapters, watch closely. They do not intervene unless absolutely necessary. Their task is not to protect the recruits, but to see whether they can survive. A neophyte who panics, who breaks formation, or who fails to execute his duty risks not only his own life, but the lives of his brothers. The judgment is harsh, for there is no room in the Astartes for weakness. But for those who endure, the first battle becomes a revelation. To fire a bolter into a charging alien horde and watch it scatter. To endure wounds that would slay any mortal and continue fighting. To stand shoulder to shoulder with their brothers in the smoke and ruin, unbroken. That is the moment when the neophyte truly feels what it means to be more than human. It is the instant he ceases to be an aspirant and takes the first step toward becoming a battle brother. These campaigns also forge bonds deeper than any forged in the monastery. Training taught them to obey, but battle teaches them to trust. A recruit who sees his brother shield him from enemy fire, or who drags a wounded comrade to safety despite his own injuries, understands what it means to be a hero means to be bound not by blood, but by oath. The chapters often speak of the battle brotherhood, a bond stronger than any family, and it is in these first campaigns that it is born. And yet, death is never far away. Many neophytes do not survive their trial by fire. Some fall to enemy blades, others to stray shots, others to simple inexperience. Their deaths are recorded without sentiment, for the chapter knows that only the strongest can endure. In some cases, the bodies are recovered and interred with solemn rites. In others, their remains are left where they fell, ashes scattered in forgotten fields of war. To the Imperium, they are nameless losses. To the chapter, they are honored in their own way, as martyrs whose sacrifice strengthens the survivors. For those who live, scars are inevitable. Their armor is dented, scorched, or painted with the ichor of alien foes. Their minds are marked by the sights they cannot unsee: the endless tide of enemies, the shrieks of the dying, the roar of artillery. But these scars are not shameful. They are proof that the recruit has stood in the crucible of war and emerged stronger. The first campaign is never forgotten by a space marine, no matter how many centuries he may later fight. It is the day he earned his place, not as a trainee or a servant, but as a warrior of the Emperor. Chaplains often mark this passage with a ritual. After the campaign, the survivors are gathered in a sanctified chamber, where their wounds are anointed with sacred oils, their oaths renewed, and their place within the chapter formally acknowledged. Some chapters burn away the neophytes' old names, replacing them with new ones given by the chapter. Others brand them with the sigil of the chapter upon their flesh. In every case, the message is the same. The boy who once was is gone. In his place stands a space marine. This does not mean the transformation is complete. A marine's body will continue to adapt to its implants, and his spirit will still be shaped by centuries of service. But from the moment he has survived battle, the final question has been answered. He is no longer a candidate, no longer an experiment, no longer an outsider. He is a brother of the chapter, bound to his kin, sworn to the Emperor, and tested in war. For the recruit, this realization is overwhelming. He may recall the boy he once was, the frightened aspirant dragged from his tribe, the initiate trembling in surgical chambers, the neophyte stumbling under the weight of his first armor. That boy is gone. Now, when he looks at his reflection in his scarred armor, he sees only one thing: the face of a space marine. And yet, this is only the beginning. For the galaxy is endless in its wars, and a space marine's life is measured not in years, but in battles. What lies ahead is a destiny defined by fire and blood, one that will test even the strongest of them to their very limits. The boy who once bore a name, a family, and a past has been stripped away piece by piece. Through the gene seed, his flesh has been reforged. Through indoctrination, his doubts erased. Through training, his fear has been broken down and rebuilt into discipline. Through war, his spirit has been tested and scarred into something harder than steel. The transformation has never been singular. It has been a sequence of deaths, each killing the man he once was, until nothing remains but the weapon that stands now in his place. He is a space marine. This identity is not merely a title, but an existence. His body is a fortress of gene-forged bone and engineered organs. His mind is a library of battle doctrine, prayers, and memories carved from war. His soul is shackled to eternal service, bound by oaths that will never be lifted until death. And his death, when it comes, will not be gentle. It will be in fire, in ruin, in the act of holding back the enemies of mankind for one more heartbeat of survival. The newly anointed Astartes learns quickly that the galaxy does not pause to celebrate his ascension. No sooner has the ritual ended, no sooner has the war plate been locked about him, than he is hurled again into battle. The Emperor's enemies are countless. For every planet saved, 10 more burn. For every victory claimed, there are wars still raging without end. In this eternal crucible, the Space Marine finds his true purpose, not in the ceremony, not in the relics of his chapter, but in the act of standing, unyielding, before the tide of destruction. This final transformation is not about power. Power was given long ago, when his body was reshaped. This is about acceptance. Acceptance that his life is not his own. Acceptance that his brothers are his only kin. Acceptance that his fate is war without end. To live as a space marine is to walk forever in sacrifice, each battle another offering upon the altar of humanity's survival. And yet, there is honor, there is pride, there is belonging. The Marine knows that he stands as one of the 1,000 beating hearts of his chapter, bound together into a single weapon. He feels the brotherhood around him, not sentiment, but unbreakable reliance. In battle, he is never alone. He is one among many, and together they are invincible until the last man falls. Some will rise higher: sergeants, veterans, captains, even chapter masters. Others will die nameless deaths on forgotten worlds. But in truth, rank matters little. From the moment of ascension, every Astartes is eternal. His deeds echo in the annals of his chapter. His gene seed endures in the apothecarian. His armor, if recovered, may one day be worn by another, carrying his legacy into new wars. In this way, no Marine is ever truly lost. Centuries may pass, worlds may crumble, and chapters themselves may fall into ruin. But the idea of the Space Marine remains immortal. The Emperor's angels of death, humanity's last and greatest defenders. Each recruit who survives the journey adds his fire to that eternal flame. Thus, the cycle is complete. From frightened boy to aspirant, from aspirant to initiate, from initiate to scout, from scout to warrior. The boy dies, the Marine is born, and through his service, the Imperium endures. Because in the end, the transformation of a Space Marine is not about creating a soldier. It is about forging a myth, a legend, a being that mortals will look upon and believe, for a moment, that humanity still has hope. And for as long as one Astartes still draws breath, the enemies of mankind will know fear. For he is not a man, he is a Space Marine.